Yesterday, and we get this question or something similar to it a lot. The question is, I was wondering if my workflow is appropriate. Video card offload to my internal drive, then transfer files from internal drive to external. I tried offloading from video card to external, and 120 gigabytes of footage from Blackmagic was taking about 100 minutes to transfer. Is that normal? Unfortunately, I was only running the file sum check. Dan, do you want to talk about how his workflow, he can improve it and maybe give some tips and workflow connections in general?
Well, first off, you should probably mention that Shotput Pro is over 10 years old now. We've been doing this for quite a while and learned a lot over the years, different operating systems and different camera formats and all that kind of stuff. So we have a lot of background knowledge about all this stuff. But his first question, maybe his last question first, is that normal? No, that's pretty slow. I forget the first part of it already. He was doing 120 megs. I know that part. He wanted to transfer. He thought the question was, should I transfer to my internal drive and then to the external? Usually that's a bad idea because, most laptops, unless you have all SSD, if it's spinning media at all or, spinning disk, they're like 5,400 RPM and they're sort of slower than most media that you have. Cards are typically, they're random access, so they're acting like an SSD and they can be pretty fast, much faster throughput than your drive can handle. So in any copy situation, you always want to look for what's the bottleneck. And copying to an internal drive and then external drive, there's no real advantage in doing anything like that as far as you're just adding extra steps. Our software is designed to control multiple inputs and outputs simultaneously. So you could be reading from one card and copying to multiple output drives at the same time. Now, it's going to thread those activities, but keep in mind, whichever one is slowest, if you had a fast drive and a slow drive, you can't finish the copy until the slowest drive is done. So you want to keep that in mind as well. The other thing I'd tell you is it often matters, or your bottleneck is usually something simple like cables or the ports you're using, or daisy chaining. Generally on laptops, especially Mac laptops, they only have one USB port, and so, or bus, I should say. And that means that anytime you plug in multiple USB devices, it's splitting the throughput, or the bandwidth. So you don't want to put too many things on the same bus if you can avoid it. So it's better to have, let's say, if it's a USB card reader, then connect your hard drives via Thunderbolt instead of USB, that kind of thing. Another possibility for slowness that could be causing problems is your cables. If it's USB cable, make sure it's a USB 3 cable, not a USB 2 cable. That'll keep you down at 20 megs per second instead of, way up there at 300 and better. You don't want to power drives or card readers from the ports either, if you can avoid that. It's better to not be drawing power from the computer. It's better to have it line powered if that's an option, if it has a wall wart that you can plug in, transformer, get power someplace else to power the devices, the hard disks and the drivers. His example of
120 gigabytes.
120 megs. That's like 20 megs per second. So that's a red flag that something's really wrong. That's like USB 2 speeds. So the first thing I'd look at is cables. Next thing I'd be looking at is, again, the power situations, what's your slowest drive, those kind of issues. Generally making 2 copies at the same time, doesn't slow it down a great deal. Some of the things that do take time is verification process, because you're asking it to read back all the files off of the output drives to get that checksum value and compare it to the original. So yeah, it takes somewhat longer, but not, not double.
Well, and it's really important. I know that you and I always really recommend using checksums in any situation, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole point, is to verify that you're getting everything moved from point A to point B. So it might add some time, but the security, at least from my point of view, and what I always tell people, is the security outweighs the time it's going to take you. Obviously, that's not true in every scenario, but the checksums are so important. And that actually might be a really good thing to talk about next, is how do people choose checksums, and how do you know which one is the best one for you? You know, we always get a lot of questions on checksums.
Well, XX hash is the fastest that we're offering right now. It was designed specifically for the M&E business. It's 64-bit, so it's faster than like MD5 was 32-bit. And so it takes advantage of some of the newer technologies to really screen. Now, the question really comes down to, do you have to deliver that? Is there somebody that's demanding that you give them a checksum report? If so, they may specify what type. MD5 is very common because it's been out there longest. A lot of workflows are wrapped around that.
Right.
But it really, one over the other isn't really. They're just different types. There's some speed differences, like I just explained, but for the most part, the security issue is they're all virtually about the same. You're talking astronomical, possibility of you copying something and it telling you it's okay and it's not. So that just doesn't happen with checksums.
Yeah.
With file size stuff, it could happen because file size, you're relying on the OS to tell you, yep, I copied it and it's okay. Well, usually that's okay, but but if it's important stuff, if it's important video, important files, then you want to make sure that byte for byte is exactly the same.
Right, and correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the way that you guys explained it to me when I started with Imagine 6 years ago was, your computer might say, yeah, you've got space to fill these 10 gigabytes. Yeah, we copied it, but in actuality, only like 9.6 was copied over. Well, what happened to the other 0.4? There's no verification. There's no way to say, yeah, it did. But the computer might say, yep, we moved everything. We copied it. It's good to go. And that may not be true. So that was something that was really good for me to hear. It made all the checksum, information makes sense to me. The other thing I'll say about checksums is a couple years ago at IBC, Dana and I learned that some checksums are not widely used in different countries. I know the UK, as far as I know, still really prefers MD5. A lot of insurance companies have an opinion on something, so it's really a good idea before you choose your checksum to find out all those different parameters. What is your client expecting? What's the insurance company expecting? What's the DP expecting? Things like that. Just ask around. Don't assume. But if you get to make the choice, then, XX hash slightly faster than MD5, but not too much. So